In this session we'll have a closer look at the opportunities and potential challenges of hybrid cloud. My name is Johannes Drooghaag. I specialize in cybersecurity and digital transformation with a strong focus on the human and the business element. I am the founder of Spearhead Management. Before we dig into the challenges and opportunities of hybrid cloud, let's have a closer look at those four elements that drive the majority of the cloud solutions. Those four elements that drive digital transformation. The first element is, of course, optimizing total cost of ownership. The second element is business continuity. The third element is agility, by which we want to be much more flexible. We want to be able to change with the market, to respond to changes in the market, to respond to changes in customer demand, and become much more customer focused. The fourth element is where it gets more complicated. Cybersecurity and data protection. Being able to optimize the total cost of ownership of IT environment is not a new business requirement, and it definitely didn't start with our journey towards digital transformation and our journey towards cloud. It is older than that, and we had all kinds of variations and all kinds of attempts to improve the total cost of ownership. One of the very strong and recurring business demands is to become less CapEx driven and CapEx burdened in our IT solutions and become much more OpEx orientated. Become much more based on pay by usage instead of pay for ownership. We want to be able to utilize IT environments and pay for the things we actually use and not just pay for everything that we own. That is one business requirement where cloud service providers have offered a lot of opportunities and a lot of solutions. We have infrastructure as a service. We have software as a service, we have storage as a service, you name it, and we have it almost as a service. Business continuity is also not a new business requirement. We always want to be able to ensure business continuity. By looking at global surfing service providers with a lot of expertise and a lot of good infrastructure and a lot of failover opportunities, we want to achieve that our IT infrastructure becomes much more resilient. We want to be able to continue our business no matter what happens. We do not want to depend on a data center, or at least depend less on that data center. Agility is one of the strong points of most cloud services. Cloud service providers offer us a huge environment of all kinds of programmable blocks we can use to change that one big and fixed process into a process built out of small steps and small blocks which we can exchange, which we can optimize, which we can change from one process into 5 or 6 or 7 different processes because our customers want all kinds of different solutions. That agility is also part of all those as a service solution. And we can create digital twins, we can create optimized processes, we can create environments which is basically able to change with the customer. The fourth element is, as mentioned, where it gets complicated: cybersecurity and data protection. GDPR is very crystal clear on who owns that responsibility for data protection, and it doesn't matter which external service provider we get involved with. We still own that responsibility towards data protection, but it's not just GDPR. It is also about trust. It's also about being able to do our business and protect our business against cyber hacks, protect our business against criminal activity. And that then feeds into business continuity. So when we bring those four elements together, we easily identify that cloud solutions providers, especially the good ones, can really make a difference here. But we also should not underestimate that no matter what services we procure and no matter what services we get from which service providers, all of these are based on a so-called shared responsibility model. And that is especially important when it comes to data protection and cybersecurity. We still own that responsibility for data protection. We still own that responsibility for cybersecurity. Basically, the majority of the cloud providers offer us the tools, the means, the opportunities, but we still have to take care of those important parts ourselves, or at least together with the service providers. And that is one element where hybrid cloud comes in very strong, and hybrid cloud offers some opportunities which other cloud solutions do not have. For example, if we would look at a hybrid cloud solution where we would put our data in our private cloud, the cloud that we manage and own ourselves, and put processes and put the result of those processes in a public cloud which customers can access, where we are able to work from anywhere and still maintain the data as secure as possible with a very clear responsibility model. We even see a growing offering of service providers who will build that private cloud, the private solution in which you can contain your data underneath a public cloud solution. It also opens doors for us to implement, for example, a zero trust model in which we create significantly better protection of the data that we own, the critical data that we own, the data we are responsible for, and still enjoy all the flexibility of those wonderful ecosystems and development environments of the public cloud service providers. But it's not just about the opportunities, as mentioned earlier. It's also about challenges. One of the things that we have learned is that a lot of organizations tend to take their current IT environment, move that to a cloud platform, and think about changes and optimizing later. But that is not how digital transformation works. That is not really leading to big benefits, and there is a significant downside of that attitude. It could lead to significantly higher cost of ownership. Because when we go to one of those public cloud providers, we start paying for its usage. And when we are not optimizing and controlling its usage, we could end up paying significantly more than when we did before. And when we then analyze where the majority of the costs are, we see that data, especially when we have large domains of data, can be a big part of that high price ticket. And that again is a reason why private cloud solutions combined with public cloud solution, the so-called hybrid cloud, can be a real good opportunity, a real good solution to manage the total cost of ownership, one of the four elements, to manage cybersecurity and data protection, one of those four elements, still offer us the agility that we want to achieve by using all those wonderful cloud services, one of the four elements, and by having a real good controlled and really good secured data domain, also improve our business continuity. So a hybrid cloud solution can, when done right, cover all those four elements and still give a better economical model. Let us start with a very clear use case for hybrid cloud, which especially is of interest for companies and organizations within the European Union. When we have a look at the current environment of cloud service providers, especially the larger ones, we will see that the majority of them are based in the United States. And the United States has legislation like, for example, the Cloud Act, which authorizes access to data no matter where it is stored and no matter where it is processed, based on, for example, court orders. Companies and organizations within the European Union are not only not happy about that, they start to recognize that as a serious risk. In addition, we have to keep in mind that the Safe Haven Act was cancelled by the European Court. And that means that data transition between the United States and the European Union is no longer considered to be equivalent to each other's privacy and data protection rules. Companies and organizations are becoming aware of that and are starting to identify that as a significant risk for business continuity, for cybersecurity, and for their obligations in data protection. And a hybrid cloud solution in which you build a data layer as a private cloud. So you still have cloud opportunities, but no longer put your company and critical data in an external public cloud solution. And in addition to that, still use all the benefits of public cloud service providers is definitely an opportunity and a use case where those who offer hybrid cloud solutions will be the winners, especially within the European Union. But we still have to make sure that we fill that first element of our 4 elements in the drivers behind digital transformation and cloud, and we need to keep focusing on optimizing the total cost of ownership. No matter how we turn it, no matter how we flip it, a hybrid cloud solution will be less focused only on operational cost and operational expenses, and will still continue to have an element of CapEx. But we can be creative around that, and we start to see service providers who are becoming creative around that. So we will in the future have data center as a service, a private cloud solution in the same or similar financial model as we have with all the other as a service models. And that could be a significant and a very important use case. Another very interesting use case for hybrid cloud is when we, for example, have a look at manufacturing and infrastructure. Latency continues to be an issue when we look at cloud solution. Not being directly connected to data storage and not being directly connected to all kinds of processes is a challenge when we look at the public cloud solution. Hybrid cloud can solve that. Hybrid cloud can be a combination of critical processes, cloud-orientated, cloud-based, in combination with the classical processes in a manufacturing facility, localized, so with very low latency and with very high availability, taking away a lot of the concerns about availability when we look at cloud opportunities for manufacturing, and still offer all the benefits of public cloud for those processes where we can actually use it, those processes where we can actually benefit from it. Another use case where hybrid cloud could be an opportunity, but we also still have to make sure that we really understand the ins and outs and that we really understand the risk models. There is a booming industry in which the hybrid cloud has already become something of a hidden champion, and that is the financial industry, and especially the fintech companies with a banking license. These licenses are highly regulated, and data protection is basically the foundation of the business model. What they have done, the majority of them, so to speak, is first cloudification of their existing data centers. So make sure that all their processes and all their data is accessible through a private cloud interface, and then start building public cloud services on top of that. For example, for a customer support portal. This model of first going for a private cloud and then build public cloud on top of that could be the smart solution for those organizations which have not yet adopted a fully cloud-enabled model. Start by making your conventional data center and your conventional processes and your conventional data cloud-enabled in a private cloud environment, and then build those public solutions on top of it. There are many similar use cases, and they all have one thing in common. There's a strong focus on data in hybrid cloud, and that is not without reason. When we look at data, we identify it in 3 forms. The first form is data in process. That is data that is actively being processed at the moment. That can be in an app, that can be in another process, that can be in a private cloud, that can be in a public cloud, that can basically be anywhere. And we have to make sure that that data in process is properly protected. We have to make sure that important personal and privacy related information is encrypted, is protected, and cannot be accessed from the outside. Public and private cloud solutions have very good mechanisms for that, but we have to make sure that we use them in the right way. The second instance of data is data in transit. That is when it is being transferred between, for example, the front end and the back end. When it's transferred between different processes. When it's being transferred between different partners. Especially when we look at hybrid cloud, where we have a local private cloud solution and a public external cloud solution, that data in transit becomes very important. And we also have to make sure that that is done properly. But we have already a lot of mechanisms in place for that. And again, we just have to make sure that we use them properly. The third one is where it goes wrong in most occasions. Data in rest. Data in rest means it is not actively being used, it's not actively being processed at the moment, it is just stored. And when we now look at data breaches, we identify that well over 90% of the data breaches in the past years are related to data in rest. Data which is stored somewhere, and for whatever reason, the protection of the data has failed. That could be because of a misconfiguration. That could be because of an abandoned instance. There are many reasons why this could go wrong. Encryption is, for example, a very good mechanism to protect data in rest. But then we also have to take care of the keys of that encryption. So the first position where private cloud in combination with public cloud could handle that is when we, for example, store the keys in our private cloud and have the encrypted data in a public cloud. A better way for many organizations, especially for organizations within the European Union with all their obligations, is to have that data in rest completely built within a private cloud solution with all the protective mechanisms around it. That could even be through a service provider which specializes in those private cloud solutions, and make sure that none of the data in rest is stored anywhere outside the own responsibility. We also have to identify that, especially when it comes to data in rest, the shared responsibility model and misunderstandings about that shared responsibility model is where things go wrong. And we see that when we analyze the data from the most significant data breaches. So data in rest is especially a very strong field for a hybrid cloud, when we make sure that the data in rest is not only properly encrypted, but also maintained within that private cloud-enabled solution. Intellectual property is an important part of business continuity. And a lot of organizations are understandably reluctant to store their intellectual property, their business secrets, what makes them better than the competition and all the things they are working on in a public cloud solution. Especially when we look at things like, for example, the Cloud Act or FISA, which is also authorizing United States government significant access to all kinds of information and data. And when we then compare that to the fact that the SolarWinds hack exposed several of those organizations which do have the authority to access all kinds of information from foreign organizations, we do understand that those organizations are reluctant to store their trade secrets in a public cloud solution. A hybrid cloud solution with the right combination of private and public cloud can take away a lot of those pain points by making sure that the trade secrets, the intellectual property, is stored within a private but cloud-enabled environment to benefit from everything that the cloud has to offer, but still not giving away the information and the data that makes the company different than the competitors. The information that no organization wants competitors or other players on the market to have access to. Protecting data is becoming a bit of a red line, so to speak, throughout this keynote, and not without reason. We face significant challenges when it comes to protecting data, and we face significant challenges when it comes to cybersecurity. And especially the last year, 2020, has shown us how important and how complicated that is. We also have learned that concepts like, for example, zero trust will help us to protect ourselves significantly better than we did in the past. And by building a zero trust layer between the public and the private cloud elements in our IT environment, we will be much better able to protect those important sets of information, to protect the trust that our consumers and customers have in us, to make sure that nothing happens without us noticing it. Because that is also something that we have to keep in mind. A lot of data breaches, a lot of hacks happen months, sometimes even years before we find out that they happened. A hybrid cloud solution and the necessary security layers between that, and a very active control of protocols, a very active evaluation of access and access right and authorization and authentication will help us to prevent those hacks from taking place and us not noticing. This is of course also possible with public cloud solutions, but then we depend significantly more on the external service providers, and it could be that the cost of that are significantly higher than when we do it in a private cloud solution. The shared responsibility model is something where things can get very uncomfortable very quickly. When there is not a very clear understanding of who is responsible for what, when there's not a very clear understanding of who is liable for what. And sometimes the one who's responsible is not always the one who is liable. And we have to make sure that we understand those implications, and we have to make sure that we understand the fine print. And one of the things that we have learned over time and in the early years of hybrid cloud is that hybrid cloud solutions with the right partners provides us significantly less complicated shared responsibility models when we do it the right way. When we make sure that we understand that who is responsible for what, and we have a very clear also legal basis for that. But we also have to make sure that we understand that if we do not take care of this properly, we can end up with the same situation as we have with several public cloud solutions, where the shared responsibility is understood differently between the different partners, and that will always be a risk. So from a risk management perspective, from a liability perspective, and even from a legal perspective, hybrid cloud solutions can solve several pain points. But when not done properly, they can even enhance several pain points, especially when it comes to liability and responsibility. So the most important thing when it comes to hybrid cloud, public cloud, private cloud, and that shared responsibility is we have to do our homework. We should rather talk a few days, weeks, or even months longer to make sure that we are all on the same page and have the same understanding about responsibility and liability, and that we know who will do what, when, and how, than rush ahead into a solution and find out afterwards that we misunderstood something. Or find out afterwards that we're sitting on a liability which we have not actively managed, where our risk management tools are not active because we did not identify the risk. When we look back at 4 elements that enable digital transformation and are very important for cloud-enabled environments: total cost of ownership, business continuity, agility, and cybersecurity and data protection, and compare that to a hybrid cloud model, we see that there will be some interesting differences which we need to understand before we make decisions, and we have to make sure that we understand the impact of those on the longer term. Total cost of ownership will be different. We will still have some capex demand in a public-private combined cloud solution. That hybrid cloud will require more capex than solely a public cloud as a service environment. We can of course look for service providers who offer us the private cloud environment as a service and where we still pay for additional usage. But in most cases, capex will be higher, but on the other hand, we will have better controls of the actual usage. So when we do it right, we can balance total cost of ownership, and with the proper model and with the right partners, we can even be at a lower total cost of ownership than a truly public cloud-enabled environment, especially when we have large volumes of data. Challenges in cybersecurity can occur when we, for example, still do not really understand the shared responsibility model. When we have a service provider for our private cloud solution and we do not have the same understanding of who is doing what. In most cases, the most efficient way to handle cybersecurity and data protection is to either let the real experts handle that, or make sure that you have both the knowledge, the experience, and the resources to handle that. Anything in between is a pre-programmed risk. And we have learned, especially in 2020, that pre-programmed risk will happen. It is no longer a matter of if, it is only a matter of when. And when we look at the statistics, hybrid cloud, when we do it wrong, can make it just as complicated and just as difficult as all the other cloud solutions. So, if we sum this all up, there are significant benefits and potential improvements in a hybrid cloud solution. But we have to make sure that we do it the right way, and we have to make sure that we understand our own responsibilities. Risk management only applies when we identify the risk. When we have not identified the risk, we are not managing it. And that is an important rule for every cloud solution, and it doesn't change when we pick a different cloud solution. This concludes my contribution on hybrid cloud. I hope that I was able to trigger some thoughts. I hope that I was able to trigger some conversations that you will have in the future with suppliers or with your customers. Because those conversations and that critical thinking about what is the right thing to do and what is the right solution for us, for the client and for the service provider in a long-term business relationship. That is what is important, and that is where we haven't done the best of a job in the past years. Let's put it like that. Digital transformation is fantastic, but we have to do it right. Thank you.